Am I online? Let's find out. Hello, I think I'm streaming. This is my first time streaming, so I have no idea what I'm doing. So hopefully I have somebody here at some point in time. So what I want to do today is I want to go over the Sony Fs7 and just do a little walkthrough and how it relates to a Sony a7s. So to begin with, this is the Fs7 body. Obviously it's much bigger, and right now this isn't the bare bones Fs7 body. This is actually with a V mount on here that's from another company, and it allows you to put things like this, the V mount battery on a Fs7. And this battery will help the camera last not 24 hours, but you would be hard pressed to be shooting a whole day and use one whole battery. Like, you would have to use a lot of footage. Now, let's look at something like the a7s. Battery life on this is going to be so short. Let me grab a battery. These guys soak up battery like nobody's business. They're just like leeches of power. So, V-mount batteries, that's the way to go. Now, for the lens that comes with the normal Fs7, let me go and grab it. It's this big fat dude. It is a 28-135. The interesting thing about this is that I actually don't like using this lens because the focal length on it isn't that good. But, you know, that's what comes with the camera. Now, the sensor on this isn't as big as something like the a7s. Such a satisfying sound. Yeah. Look how big this thing is now. Like, you just look like a professional. Like, oh, hey, what's going on? It's me, Javier, here to record the things with this big camera as opposed to this smaller one. So, like I said, the biggest reason why I don't like this lens in general is because the focal length. So 28 meters isn't wide enough for wide angle shots, and for a carry around zoom, and for this to be the end all be all of zoom lenses for a camera, it just doesn't get wide enough. And when you're punching in and zooming in, it's nice for portrait mode. But let's say what you're viewing this on right now is a 14 millimeter, and I can like get this close to the camera and look at all this stuff on the side. But, oh hey Chrome Zone, what is up, man? How are you doing today? How heavy is this? It's very heavy. This is my first time streaming, so I didn't even know I could look at the comments on my screen. But hey, it's very heavy. I don't know exactly. I think I put a link to the actual camera in the info, so if I did that correctly, I don't know if you'll go off the stream, but there's a link to like the camera and the specs in there. So what I was talking about though is when this is at 28 meters, this isn't a full frame camera. This sensor is actually smaller, and it's built to shoot 4K like a boss. And that's what it does. It shoots 4K like nobody's business. And it's amazing at doing it. The big factor of why this camera would be better to use than this one is, this is the OG a7s, by the way, is because one, it can shoot slow-mo at 180 frames per second, and it looks amazing, but it can do it continuously. So if you were to shoot something and film it, I could sit here and shoot all of life at 180 frames per second, and then when I bring it into my editor, what's really cool is I can it just puts it into the editor already in slow-mo. Like, you don't have to do any post-processing to it. It just already looks like slow-mo, and you can edit it in slow motion. It's really cool. I like that you are doing this. I appreciate your work in your videos. Thanks, Chromezone. I like all of the positivity you put out. I have a podcast coming out about people passionate about their work, and we should connect and do one together. I feel like it would be an awesome discussion about 8-bit music and all that such. Anyhow, so one of the reasons why this lens comes with this camera is because it has all these settings on it. And I don't know if you can see these. Let's focus. Let's focus here. Maybe you can see that. I don't know. I don't know how this looks on a live feed. So right now there's different things. So you can automatically, actually, there's like an app where you could actually control this lens and do different things with this. So this lens is built specifically for the camera, and it looks amazing, but anyhow, I don't know. The best part about the lens is that it just looks big and you look really professional with it. But if you don't know how to use it, then whatever. Let's go ahead and move on to another big factor of why people would want to buy a camera like this as opposed to using your cell phone, which I think it really comes down to story whenever you're using cameras and things like that. But if you know how to utilize a camera like this, it really does help you tell the story better visually, I guess. And one of those things is this knob right here. It's an ND filter. So when you're shooting outside, what's cool is you can stop down the aperture of your lens and get a really shallow depth of field. And then when you move your ND, it gives you stops of light. Now, there's no way that I can show you this in the stream, or I bet there would be, but Mr. Javier is not a professional streamer over here yet. But just know that this ND filter helps with stopping down light and helping with highlights and shadows and things of that nature when you're shooting out in, say it's really bright outside and your highlights are blown out and all of the shadows are like too dark. Like, you could either have everything in the shadows or you could either have everything in the clouds. But what's cool is with this, you can get everything. Like, this camera is built to film, so all of the contrast in the sky and in, like, say somebody's underneath an awning is there. So that's one of the big reasons why these cameras still exist. It's the dynamic range. This thing can shoot in 10-bit, which I think the GH5, the Panasonic GH5 can shoot in 10-bit, but this camera just does an amazing job at capturing color, or capturing light per se, which is what all things do. So that's actually a really good question, Chromezone. So in low light, this camera doesn't do as good as the a7s. So this camera is hands down the king of low light. And if you were to, I don't know, I could turn all the lights off in this room and then turn this camera on and like put the low light on, and it would look like the moon was in here. With this camera right here, the sensor isn't as big, and because the sensor isn't as big, it doesn't allow as much light to hit that sensor. And the reason why is so it was built for the whole 4K thing. But that being said, when you're using a camera like this, it's mostly supposed to be used in situations where you can control your light. For example, I was using this camera for a shoot yesterday or 2 days ago, and we were shooting like around a bar, and I couldn't, obviously a bar doesn't have the best lighting, but at least I had 4 like set lights that I could set around the bar. And without those lights, all of that footage would have looked so noisy and not good at all. But with this camera, it would have been no problem. Now, the way that the light would hit the figures would not be as good, but that's just a matter of the actual space. But with this camera, it's much better to have lights that you can manipulate, and if you're on a movie set, or not necessarily on a movie set, but if you're outside and you can control your light, that's what this is good for. Or if you're outside and you can't control your light and you're in broad daylight, this helps with stopping down and dealing with the sun. Hope that answers your question. There's a couple different things, and I'm actually just gonna take this lens off because it's so big. Let's put a different one on it. Boom. 24-70. All right. You know, my live stream's hitting a record. 3 people watching, setting workers all day, son. Okay, so there's a couple things that are different about stepping up to a cinema camera like this versus a a7s. You go about audio for your own videos. Oh, so it depends on what video I'm doing. So for something like this, I'm actually on a shoot tomorrow, so obviously I don't own this camera, so it's through the company that I work for. But like right now I'm shooting on an a7s, another a7s, but I have a shoot tomorrow, so I have to have the gear here to get to the place early in the morning. But what I normally shoot on is this guy, the Sony RX100. This is the Model 4. And then I have that going into a DigiDesign M-Box 2. Not the OG M-Box, but I feel like an M-Box 2 is kind of getting OG by this time. And then that just goes straight into Premiere. Most of the time, that's what I'm using for, like, if you see me in this space, I'm using a DigiDesign device. And then if I'm not, I'm probably using a Zoom H6 or a Zoom H4n. But if you want to talk about audio, that's another big component about why I like using this camera as opposed to this one, which is that this has 2 XLRs on it. I don't know if you can see or if I'm in focus, but that's cool. So the auto leveling on the FS7 is amazing. It's like, I don't think I've ever ran into a situation where I've had a boom mic and a lav mic recording people and worried about clipping. And that's even with like people screaming or anything like that. The auto leveling on this camera is amazing. Now obviously you can set the camera to not be auto, and you can set your own levels on this side right here where the operator is, but for doing any type of run and gun shooting, you don't have time to do that, and this camera is amazing at it. That I love it. Now, the thing that I don't like about the a7s is if you wanted to have, all right, let's set up a situation that you have somebody that you're following, like a host of some sort, and you have a boom mic that you have on the camera, and then you also have a lav on that host. In order to accomplish something like that, you have to get a Y bracket, put a boom mic on that Y bracket, and then put the lavalier thing on this side, and maybe you'll have a light on right here, and then it's just this big rig. And then that you can't connect directly into the a7s. You got to run it into a passive splitter, which has 2 XLR inputs in it, and then that passive splitter goes from there into the little tiny hole right here, and it just becomes this huge rig that is unstable. And anytime you wanted to like get a shot, you're sitting there with like all of this stuff on it. Yeah, that's why I don't like it for run and gun situations where you have to get audio. Now, if you're just doing a music video and you needed to do a beauty reel, this is your guy because it's so lightweight. But it can't shoot 180 frames per second like this guy can. Yeah. So, audio is amazing on this camera. Next thing is this is a little different, and I'm actually gonna go get the LCD for this. Whenever I'm putting these things together, I always feel like I'm like building Legos of some sort. Boom. Boom. All right, let's turn this baby on. Turn on. Whoa, we got 4 people watching. That's cool. Hi to you people. Hey, see you, Chromezone. Thanks for stopping by, man. All right. So, what I also want to show you is right here. Am I in focus? There we go. I think. Close enough. So, right here, ISO, white balance, and shutter. The ISO gain is a little different on an FS7 versus what you're used to on a a7s. This doesn't have any batteries on it, so there's no way I can show you. Or maybe I can. Let's do it. Pop, 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 turn it on. Doesn't turn on. Oh, yes it does. Come on. Okay. So, on an a7s, there we go. So on an a7s, when you adjust the ISO, it's just really easy, like this. It's just this dial, and it just gives you all of these different things to adjust, right? But it's not like that on a digital cinema camera. You might have access to certain things like that, but when you're in the camera, you only have 3 options. You have low, mid, and high, and that's it. Now you can access the different versions of low, high, and mid and set what those numbers are in your ISO, but it's just 3 presets and that's it. That's one of the things I don't like about using a camera like this, because sometimes you have to hit numbers that are like in between there to get good balance on your shot. But I don't know, it's not a make or break, and I don't know if that's like something that's just stock on any kind of upper level camera, which I don't know why it would be. But yeah, that's that. And then here also, your white balance has 3 different presets, and it's just a knob that you hit, which is nice because it's accessible right here, and then you can switch between, like, say you have a preset for tungsten and daylight and all those different things. But again, if you're sitting and you're just chilling on an a7s, what's cool is you can just hit right, and then all of your white balance is like right here, and then you can just set it. That's not how it is on the FS7. It's just a little bit harder to manipulate and manage and do all that business with. Moving on. The menu selection is, I don't know, it's a Sony menu. I feel like Sony already gets a whole bunch of bad slack for their menu system. So one of the bad things about not having all of these buttons to manipulate, like the Sony Fs7 II, I feel like a lot of people wrote into Sony and they're like, hey, can you please give us more hotkeys so we can do everything that we need to? And with this one, there's only basically 3 user hotkeys that you can use, and then you can have a handle that also has, I think, 3 more, so you can have a total of 6. But what I find myself doing a lot of is punch zooming in the FS7. And what happens is when you're shooting stuff, yeah, let me get out of the user menu. Oh wait, maybe it's set back. Oh, then never mind. What I like to do is I like to set my focus, so my magnifying focus, to user menu, and then these two keep the same. So the nice thing about an FS7 is that you can switch to S and Q mode, which is your slow-mo. So if you have your presets and everything for what you want your slow-mo to be, all you have to do while you're on set is hit S and Q, and then automatically you're in slow-mo, which is nice. The only problem is you have to switch your shutter to double what your slow-mo is. So you could switch from something like 23.976 to 180 frames per second by the click of a button, but you always got to remember to switch your shutter. Now, a lot of that could be alleviated by this guy right here. They're inside the SD cards right here, which it doesn't take normal SD cards, it takes these XQD cards. But it does take one, oh, come on. It does take one SD card. And what you can do is you can put your own presets on that SD card and then go into your user menu and then just load your, right here, it says user. So right here could be presets for whatever you wanted the camera to be. So that's another way that you could alleviate the problem of not having much to select from on set, and you had to like get to different camera preset from slow-mo to fast motion really fast. There's some irony there in what I just said. But yeah, there's that. Another nice feature is the full auto, which helps amazingly whenever you're out on set and you have to do, you just, like, settings aren't what you need them to be and the moment is happening immediately and you just got to hit full auto and be like, all right, I want this, I need to get this on camera and my camera isn't in the right way. So what happens is if you hit full auto, it does a really good job of doing its automatic stuff, and it's just this big button right here. You can't really miss it. This camera has 2 different modes. One is like if you were to be recording in, let me see if I can get it right here, and see if you can see it. Maybe. It's close enough. So, with this, there's 2 different modes. There's Scene L, and then there's Custom. So if you were in Custom, imagine that to be if you were filming and you wanted the settings to just be baked into the camera. Like you want a image that the moment it comes out of the camera and from the card and onto your computer, you just want that to be how the image is supposed to look. Now, if you're familiar with things like S-Log and all that stuff, you want to be shooting in Scene L, which gives you a flatter image, but in post-processing, it gives you more dynamics to work with. So you can do stuff like the S-Log3, S-Gamut, S-Log2, and all those things that you're accustomed to. If you're a Sony user, you'll know. Most of the time, I'll end up shooting in something like S-Gamut Scene S-Log3, and what I'll do is maybe bake the LUT or the lookup table onto the footage, so I get that dynamic range, like a Rec 709 or something like that. Or you could be filming and have, just so you don't have a flat image on your viewfinder, you could be filming in something like the S-Log3, but then put a LUT just going to your monitor, which is nice because then you get an overall view of what it's supposed to be looking like in post. Yeah. One thing that I do not like about how the FS7 is ergonomically built is it has this part for your shoulder to sit in right here, right? And you can put it right here, and what's weird is you can already see. Look at my face. It's like, meh. Like it's not balanced very well. And what I end up doing is putting my shoulder within the V mount, and then the camera right here. It's still not balanced, but that's also because that lens is right here, and it's not like one of those longer lenses. But I feel like the way that they put this shoulder thing in here, it's not really doing anything. Like nobody's gonna put their shoulder right here because your bicep on this arm won't feel good by the end of the time. But what's nice is with the little handle that they have, at least if you rest your shoulder in between, it sits pretty nice. Not only that, but you have the viewfinder pretty good in front of your face that way, which is nice. What I find myself holding the camera like most of the time is like this, resting it against my resting it against like where my chest is right here, because it's a nice place for the V-mount battery to sit, and you get a nice nice access of stabilization. I don't even know if that's a term, but I'm going to use it. Now, what else can I say? The record and stop buttons are on the top, which is nice, and then on the side, nice and big. On and off is down here, and the main things that I use most of the time, I think I brought up. It's slow motion that you can get to readily easily, but you just have to remember to hit the shutter button. And then the what was I gonna say? This is what happens when you go live. You just have to like wing it and stay on task, stay on target. Oh, the ND filters for when you're outside are amazing. Third thing that this camera has a leg up on is the audio. The fourth thing would be the dynamic range. The fact that this can do 10-bit recording is amazing. And once you work with a lot of footage with an a7s and an FS7, you come to really appreciate 10-bit footage. If you're not used to it, then you wouldn't really appreciate how much dynamic range is there, but it just makes your life easier and so much. It makes post-processing so much faster on the other end because you have so much information to work with. The certain gripes with it, like I said, were not enough hotkeys here on the buttons. One of the things though is if you're sitting here and you're looking at the screen, it's not that high definition of a screen, so you always have to punch zoom in order to pull your focus correctly. And then I would say there could be other things that about the camera, but I mean, it's like a $7,000 camera, so obviously it does a lot of stuff amazingly well, and it's one of the staples, and I feel like it's future proof for the time being because it can shoot 4K at 60 frames per second. It's just that, you know, there's a couple things that I don't like about it, but I feel like they've addressed a lot of those issues with the second iteration of this camera. But the first iteration is amazing. Just like the OG a7s, it's an amazing camera, and it does everything that you need it to, and it still holds its weight today. I mean, obviously there's other iterations of this camera, but I still think this camera is it's still over $1,000 to purchase, and it still comes up with an amazing image. Like we use this, and we use this camera on all our shoots at the Chive. So I don't know. I hope this was helpful for you guys. If you liked this video, go ahead and give me a like, and go ahead and subscribe if you're watching this later on. Thank you to my 4 people that watched this live, my wife included, and I will see you guys on the next one. Hopefully I know how to even stop streaming here.